evening and welcome. We will talk today about mastering your salary negotiation. And before I will jump into the session, let me give you a bit of context and firstly about And Ahead, our mission and team, and then secondly to introduce the concept of our session and then my invited dear guest and expert, Katie. And Ahead is a digital platform to support individuals on their back to work journey or in a career transition. We founded And Ahead 2 years ago, but would already start 4 years ago with the first forum to help people think about how they could strategize their back to work journey, because it's sometimes very tedious. And our mission is of the whole team. Eugene is here today, and Carol probably will also join, is really to support individuals to reach their full potential independent of the life stage they are in. That's very important. And we all try to make that happen and support that journey and provide the right, not only community, but also provide tools and coaching or a methodology, which we came up with, which is the 3 C's. And the 3 C's is about clarify, first of all, your where you are. Then secondly, create your own career strategy and personal brand. And second is the connect part. But these are big bulks. So we in 2023 or end of 2022 thought, how can we best, put those big buckets into smaller bites? So we came up with this 10 steps guide to go back to work. Katie, could you come give the thanks for the slide? And so we would do every month one session as a webinar. And then on top in June, we always have our flagship forum, the Lead Together forum, which we will had this year at one of our corporate partners, Cosnova. And so we believe that a structure, a pragmatic tools, and this community is key for a healthy career transition. And so last session we had, how to apply for jobs with the right employer as part of Connect with 2 senior leaders as well, Jenny Chan from Lego and Aditi from DB Schenker. And this session is about the topic of negotiation. And why do we believe that this topic of negotiation is especially important? Well, we all heard about or already experienced the gender inequalities, which also have an impact on the gender pay gap. And we are progressing here, but very slowly. And thanks to also this year's Nobel Prize winner, Claudia Goldin, a professor from Harvard University. She not only is the 3rd female laureate, but fittingly, she also covers the gender, or her work covers the gender pay gap topic in the workforce. And we believe, or we say congratulations, because we believe that's very, very good news to have someone getting the Nobel Prize who is researching about this topic. And so before, I don't want to spend too much time, but now I have the great pleasure to introduce to you Katie Starks as a speaker and senior negotiation as expert and ICF certified coach. And for our session today, and give you, because we believe that a negotiation is a very powerful way to tackle the gender pay gap. And we are under control because we can prepare for that. So we really want to encourage you. We can all do this, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but there are tools one can prepare. And with no better than Katie, who spent not only, most of her career in financial services, had for 15 years leadership positions in the corporate world, and also started her coaching journey a couple of years back. And so I think she will really be someone who has worked, in challenging roles, has hired a lot of people, has experienced also a lot of negotiations and helped a lot of clients, especially female clients, to raise kind of their salaries, and how she does it. And she will share more in this session. So Katie, thanks for coming. Thanks for devoting your time and, also sharing your little tricks with us. I'm really happy to have you, and the floor is now all yours.
All right, thank you. I hope that I can manage to get this PowerPoint stuff to work. So before we get started, I will give you a brief quote. And the quote is this. It's by Chester Karras, who wrote a really good book about negotiations. In business as in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. And I want you to be able to get more by negotiating really well. And let's move right along. Who am I? And who am I to tell you about negotiations anyway? So let me start by a brief introduction. So I like to call myself a high performance coach. It's my goal to help women in particular to perform better while having less stress in their lives. I'm also an experienced C-level leader. I have years of leadership experience, and I think that gives me a really unique kind of view of what it's like from a management point of view when you're in a salary negotiation with somebody for a position. And I nearly put negotiations goddess here, but I thought, no, let's not be too conceited about it. But I do kind of think of myself as somebody that really has a lot to share on this subject, and I'm really happy to share everything I know today, actually, even some of my secrets. So, and you'll see it's nothing overly complex. And lastly, I'm a supporter of women everywhere. I'm always out there trying to help women wherever they're from, whatever their situation. That's what I do. Maybe lastly, I'm a mother and a wife, so I know also the challenges of being a working mum and trying to figure things out while you've got all that going on as well. So I'm just going to say a couple more things of what I like to do. What do I love to do, right? So I love coaching. It's actually my hobby, and I've made it into my job. It's probably the thing I like to do more than anything else right now. I also really like lifting weights, and I think weightlifting gives you a feeling of power, so I love that. And I like being outdoors. I'm always looking for ways to be outside in nature, whatever the weather. And then other things I like to do is I love to learn. I'm always reading, always learning, always looking at the next shiny new thing and trying to see how it can serve me and benefit me in my life. And then I do like doing some public speaking. I actually love that, standing up, talking about things that I'm really, really passionate about. And lastly, I love knitting. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's actually my hobby. It's probably my second favorite thing after coaching. So that's who I am. So let's move right along into what we're going to do today. So the challenge is, right, nobody ever teaches us how to negotiate, right? So how are you supposed to know how to do it? And we're going to look at that today. And so what's the goal? I want to leave you with some specific tools and skills, some things that you can say in conversations with HR that will help you specifically with your next negotiation. And we're going to talk about why it's so important, because there's some really good whys, and some of them are not that obvious, but women in particular need to know how to negotiate. And the strategy, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the skills you need. We're going to have a little go through of how you prepare for a new job. some of the non-salary negotiables that you maybe haven't thought of that are important. And then I'm going to share my rules. These are just my personal rules. You can feel free to disagree or listen to other experts, but that's what I believe. And then we're going to talk about the BATNA, what that is, how it can help you. And we're going to demo a brief conversation. So Britta and I are going to demo a brief conversation where I'm going to be asked questions. You're going to see how I respond. And then you're going to get to go out into groups of 2 to practice in a really kind of safe environment. Believe me, they're very harmless questions, but they'll give you a little feeling of how to respond and how to gain a little confidence. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about reaction. How do I react to an offer? What do I say? What do I not say? And then some final tips. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how I can help you, how we can connect. And we're going to have time for Q&A. And just if you want to, you can stay on a bit longer. We've got a 1-hour session planned. I'm happy to stay longer if you have loads of questions. Let's see how it goes. All right, so let's move right along into why should you negotiate? So women earn 18% less than men. This is in Germany, and this has to stop. Why should we get paid less for doing the same work? The second reason is we, fortunately, live 5 years on average longer than men. Most women need more money for their old age and not less. And a lot of times people don't talk about that, but it's really important. And then the third thing is women still take most of the parental leave, and that affects your pension. The other thing is most part-time work is done by women, and that creates even bigger salary gaps over many years in some cases. So the main reason is I want you to be well paid for your hard work, and so should you. You should be confident that you deserve it. That's really, really important. So let's move on. And I want to give you some data. So this is just a couple of things that I put together in Excel. And the number 100 is very random. I realize most people don't start a new job with 100,000 at the very beginning of their career. But I just want to highlight that if a man goes into a job making 100,000 and the woman goes in making 82,000, that gap of 18K at the beginning of their career grows if they receive a 5% pay increase every year to 48K after more than 20 years. You can also imagine what happens, too fast. You can also imagine what happens if the woman then somewhere in, say, year 10 decides to take time off to have kids and then returns part-time. It makes the problem grow. And then just the other slide that I accidentally just showed you. Let's talk about what happens with that money. So supposing the guy took half of that difference every year. If he pays 50% tax, let's assume he's got 9,000 after tax more than the woman. And he invests that in an ETF at 7%. He's going to have 318,425 euros more than the woman in 20 years based on performance in the past of simple market following ETFs. So that's why it's really important. It's important to get in at the beginning of your career or as early as possible with the jump or with a higher salary so that every percentage you get on that over the years accumulates. And, people spend money on all sorts of different things, but having help with a negotiation will buy you an awful lot of whatever else it is you're spending your money on in years to come. So it's really, really worth getting the expert help you can with this, but also just learning the skills and practicing them. All right, so let's move on. So what skills do you need to be really good as a negotiator? So the first thing is you need to be a really good communicator. And I've emphasized listening here because it's often in the nuance of the people opposite you where you're getting the biggest clues as to what they're thinking. Make sure that you also learn how to really clearly express what you want. I spend a lot of time with my clients practicing this. How do I say the 3 most important things and how do I articulate them clearly? And honestly, that's something you can learn. It's not something we're born with. The second thing is you need to be able to do research. I know it's a bit obvious and we might think we can all do research, but you need to get good at doing research and figuring out where can I find information about what this salary pays, what this job pays, what the salaries are. And also, really importantly, knowing that salaries differ in different countries and that you need to be aware of the place you're applying as well. So there's a lot to research. And one of the ways you get good at researching is to have a really good network. The people in your network have the information that you need to access to be able to, sorry, I'm having some technical issues with my mouse. Probably me, but so you need to have a really good network in order to gather this information. For instance, somebody in your network may have worked somewhere that you're applying before. They may be able to give you some intelligence about what the salaries are, and also other things like what's it like to work there, but specifically about salaries. And another thing you really need is courage, and hand in hand with that goes practice. So when you first do a negotiation, it might seem really daunting and really scary. The more you practice this, the more it becomes second nature. I negotiate everywhere all the time about all sorts of different things. It's just become normal to me to at least try to negotiate in any given situation. And lastly, you really do need the right mindset, and you really have to be convinced that you deserve this money that you're going for, and you should not settle for less. That's probably the most important thing in the whole preparation and the whole skill set needed. And again, you can gain that. We're not born thinking that we're the greatest and that we deserve a lot of money. We have to learn and develop that skill along with other skills. So how do you prepare? So the first thing you do is, access research networks. And a lot of this stuff is fairly obvious. I'm not going to stay on this for too long. Places like Glassdoor, again, your network. Ask people. Most people are willing to say what they earned in a company once they've left that company. I've always taken the stance that when I leave a company, I tell my successor what I earned so that they can, help them with their negotiation. Be aware of non-disclosure agreements and secrecy. We'll talk about that in a minute too. And then the next thing is ask. Like so many people I coach, if I say to them, have you asked what the salary pays? They go, oh no, I haven't asked. Ask the headhunter, ask the recruiter for an indication of what the salary is. And then the next thing is create your own benchmark for your salaries. I just want to talk about ranges for a moment. So I'm really opposed to you. First of all, I'm opposed to telling anybody what you want to earn. But the second thing is, if you have to tell somebody what you want to earn, don't give a range. If I say I want between 60 and 70, what I'm really saying is I'll take 60. So please be aware of that, because that's how recruiters think as well. I've seen it happen so many times. People come in and go between 60 and 70, and everybody's like, yeah, it's 60. That is the number. And then once you've decided what those numbers are, I recommend that you write them down in large letters on a piece of paper and commit them to your memory and to your belief system. This is how I recommend you do it. It's a bit of fun, so I'll just move on to the next page. So what I do is when I'm working with somebody, I say, what is your dream salary, the highest salary, the one that will allow you to put 9,000 euros or whatever it is into ETFs and grow your future fund for when you no longer want to work. And so I start out with what I call your champagne salary. You can call this your Ferrari, whatever you want to call it. Again, hundreds of random number. I realize that's not always realistic. And you put down the number that you would ideally really like to earn in this job. And the next thing then that you do is you put down the absolute minimum. I call it your beer number. What's the minimum I'm going to accept? And write it down and think on it and be realistic, because that number, you're not going below it. If somebody offers you less, you're going to have to walk away from it. So please make sure your minimum is actually your minimum. And then, of course, somewhere in the middle, you then have your Prosecco, which you'd be happy with, if not completely delighted. So that's how I recommend you do it. And I also recommend, I'll cover this in a minute, that you keep this information to yourself for now. This is not information you want to share with any recruiter, any hiring manager, anywhere. It's your information that you've created. And so then what do you do? So You also make a list of all the non-salary components. And I'll just very quickly go through a few. So non-salary doesn't mean non-financial, but it's important because these are not in the payroll, and a lot of companies are really willing to give you these more than they are willing to give you extra salary. So one of them might be a welcome bonus or a relocation bonus. Company equity sometimes can be negotiated. Budget. A lot of my clients actually negotiate money to pay for my coaching when they start a new job, which I think is really great. But you might want to do an MBA or something, and you can ask. And then another thing, like I have a client that she was offered a salary and she didn't like the salary. It wasn't quite enough. And she said to them, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 4 days a week for that. And they agreed. So now she's working a 4-day week for, by the way, what sounded to me like a pretty decent salary, just by asking. So you can ask, it's worth trying. And you can get extra time off if you want, negotiate time off for studies, for anything else that you want to do. Or, working remotely now in most companies is a given, but some companies don't allow it. So you can put it on your list if it's important to you. And lastly, sometimes companies will say, well, I can't pay you this now, but I'll give it to you in 6 months. I don't need to tell you how many times I've spoken to my clients that didn't get it in writing. 6 months later, the manager's left. They never said it. They've forgotten, and she imagined it, and all the things. So you must get it in writing. And I'm going to talk about what to do if they don't give it to you in writing a bit later on. But please get that in writing. Otherwise, it's just too easy for somebody to say it never happened. And okay. And then, so what are my top rules? Again, these are my rules. This is something that I've done with, over 100 clients so far that I've helped with negotiations, and most of the time they work reasonably well. So the first one is you do not tell your current salary to anybody. I'm going to give you for each of these an example of how I use this with a client. So I had a client, but no, before I say that, in the US, I think in about half the states in the US, it's now forbidden to ask people their current salary, because everybody knows it's rubbish. Because the minute you tell somebody your salary, you've been marked as somebody that earns that. And then the most you can hope to earn is probably about 20 to 25% more than that from the job you're applying for. So I had a client that was transferred to Frankfurt from another country. She thought the salary she was being offered was fairly reasonable, and it wasn't. It was an awful salary for a highly skilled employee. She went for another job interview. She went for multiple job interviews. She went for one that she really wanted. They asked her salary. She didn't tell them. And she is now earning more than double what she was earning in the job that she didn't want to mention the salary. Now, if she had told them the salary, I guarantee she would have got nowhere near what she got. So please do not tell people your current salary. I'm going to show you a way to weasel out of that question later on when I practice with Britta. And then the other thing is, don't tell people how much you want to earn. They should tell you what the job pays. I'm a real advocate for transparency. And the only reason we're playing all this negotiation game is because companies don't tell you what the job pays. So why should you tell them? So you do not reveal how much you want to earn yet. And just a very other quick anecdote, I was coaching a woman who was returning to a company she'd previously worked for. And she said she did her numbers, and her absolute minimum number was 60,000, and she was hoping to get 75. She said, I'm not going in for less than 60,000. I said to her, we're not going to talk about salary. We're not going to share. So she used the technique that I'm going to show you with Britta. And the first offer they came back with was 90. Now, can you imagine if she had said to them, I'm not taking a cent under 70? They wouldn't have given her 90. They may have given her 75 and pretended they were being nice. And then we went back and negotiated some more, and she ended up with 95 and a 20K bonus. So it's just all about keeping that to yourself for now, because you do not want to reveal your position too early in the game. And the next thing is, don't start negotiating too early in the process. In an interview, you are assessing whether you want to work for this company. They're assessing whether you're a good fit for the role, and you're both still deciding. You may not have a full idea of what the job entails. So in the early part of the interview process, I would recommend trying to put off that discussion and just saying, you know, I'm not sure this is the right fit yet. Can we have the conversation a bit later on? That would be, those would be probably my three main rules. And there's one last one, which is be willing to walk away. You are not desperate. And by the way, if you have been investing money and saving money because you've had a good salary in the past and you have enough money to live on for a few months, you're going to be much more willing to walk away than if you're financially struggling and you're desperate. So be willing to walk away. It's never the last job. There's always other opportunities, and that's really important. So let's talk about the BATNA. So what on earth is a BATNA? So this comes from a book called Getting to Yes. And it's really important to understand how this works. It's not complicated. It stands for Best Alternative to Negotiated Agreement. And what it really means is, what's my plan B if this situation doesn't work out that I'm currently negotiating? And there are two things really important about the BATNA. The first is to know what yours is. Do I have 4 other jobs? Don't really care about this job. It's just one of 4. Is this a job I'm just practicing, or is this my dream job that I really want to have? That, depending on what the answer to those questions are, you will have more or less power, more or less confidence in the negotiation. The same, of course, goes for the person sitting opposite you. They are going to have either 4 candidates, and they're going to take the cheapest one. So you can imagine what that does to your negotiating power. Or how about if they've been looking for months and you're the only candidate that they have, and they're absolutely desperate to hire somebody, then you know they don't have a good BATNA and you're in a strong position to negotiate harder. That's why you have to ask questions and listen so that you can try to find out that information. And I tell every single person that comes to me for coaching, even people who are currently in an existing company. And by the way, in the interest of time, we've decided to focus today only on new jobs, but it holds true for both. If you want to negotiate an increase in your pay, you have to have alternatives. That strengthens your position massively, and it strengthens your arguments as to why you want more money as well. So make sure you have a good BATNA. And okay, so now we're going to come to the part where I'm going to ask Britta to ask me a couple of questions. And I just want you to pay attention to how I answer these questions, because we're going to have you go away and actually just practice this very quickly. It's a real simple thing, but we're just going to play this for you just to see how it could look if I was talking to an HR person. So just notice how I respond to these questions. So over to you, Britta.
Okay, Eugene, can you put us in the spotlight? Then it's probably easier.
You are in the spotlight.
Okay, I was
okay,
not.
go ahead.
So thanks. Okay, Katie, so good. Thanks for coming in and following our invitation to the interview, and also about already sharing a bit of your profile. As we are very interested in your profile and also what you've done, we would be very curious now if you could let us know a bit about your current salary. How does that look like?
Unfortunately, when I joined my company that I'm working for at the moment, I had to sign a very strict NDA. So I cannot reveal my current salary to you.
Okay, so I understand that. So and respect that. Thanks for letting us know and sharing. But if it comes to salary, you definitely have your expectations, I guess. So what are your expectations for this role?
I haven't actually really thought about the financial side of things at all so far. I know that I really like the sound of this job, and I really would love to work with you. I mean, we've already had these conversations, but I don't really know what these kinds of roles pay. Would you be willing to indicate the ranges to me?
Oh, I'm a bit surprised, so that somebody who comes to an interview doesn't have a figure or a range in her head. But yeah, I'm also ready and happy to share a bit. And would appreciate if you could also then give an indication if that's in your range as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so this role would normally indicate, be in the range of 90 to 100, 110 at the most.
Okay, all right, we're going to stop it right there. So just pay attention to when you're in a situation with anybody in HR, you do not want to be combative. So you don't want to say things like, no, I'm not going to tell you what my salary is. I mean, I know you probably wouldn't do that, but that's an elegant little way of getting out of that discussion. And that works every time. Nobody's going to go, oh, NDA, whatever, you can still tell us. Nobody ever questions it if you say that. And by the way, your employment contract is an NDA, so you're actually telling the truth. So I think it's really important not to lie in these situations, but I would really encourage you to say that. It works every single time. And then you may have noticed when I turned it around and said that I didn't want to say how it didn't feel combative. I was just kind of evading the question. And this is the one time I always say this to my clients. This is the one time you're actually allowed to act a bit dumb and actually just act like you're stupid and have no idea what these kinds of jobs pay. And by the way, I have to say that I've done this in very senior positions, and I have to say I did this with one job where I just acted stupid, said, oh, do you know, I've got no idea. And they just made me an offer. So we'll talk about what to do when they make you an offer later. All right, so the next thing we're now going to do is we're going to give you a really brief little opportunity to practice this. And it really is just going to be a few minutes. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you in breakout sessions in duos with somebody you've never met before. So we're going to give you a minute to get to know one another, like just have a little chat. And then one person's going to be the interviewer and the other the interviewee. And you're just going to practice those two questions. That's it. Just practice responding just so that you can commit that somehow to your muscle memory to make it normal to respond that way. You'll have a couple of minutes, probably a bit more time than you need, but a couple of 2.5 minutes each way. After 2.5 minutes, you'll see a little message appear and we're going to switch and then we're going to repeat. And after that, you're going to come back and discuss. So just in case you can't remember the questions, take a picture of this before you go in. And Eugene is going to be moving you into your breakout sessions. All right, so if you'd like to put a couple of comments on what that was like for you. I'm just going to answer one question that came up from somebody that wasn't in the breakout room, which is, won't this, if I say that I'm have no idea about the salary, does that make me look like I haven't done my research? Does that make me look a bit stupid? And the answer is yes, but you don't care, because the alternative is to actually tell them, and then you could be so far off that I would really recommend that you try that. Just these tips I'm giving you, I would just encourage you to try them and see what a difference it makes. So we had some, a couple of the breakout rooms that there weren't two people in them. So apologies for that. We had a couple of technical issues. If you want to put a little comment in the chat box just about how that was for you. And otherwise, I think everybody's back. Is everyone back, Eugene?
Yes,
Yeah.
everyone's back now.
All right, well, let's move on then, because I just want to give you a couple of other bits of information before we close and go to questions. So the first thing is, if somebody offers you, so you're assuming you haven't told them what you want to earn, and then somebody comes back and makes you an offer. I would really encourage you to react very neutrally to slightly disappointed. So I had a job where they called me up with a job offer that was about 20% over my champagne. And I just went, okay. And they were really excited. Oh, we've got this great offer and we've put it together and packaged it. And I just went, okay. I'm going to think on that. Is that all right? Can I have a couple of days to think it over? So that's, do not look too happy. When I said that, immediately they knew, oh, she's going to come back and renegotiate, and don't react immediately. And I recommend don't react immediately, whether you're delighted or whether they've gone right underneath your beer salary. Just don't react. React slightly disappointed to neutral and ask time to consider. And then what you do is you go away and build a few good arguments for why you would like to have more. And they have to be solid arguments. And they should be based on your performance and not on your financial situation at home. So whenever people used to come into me and go, oh yeah, but I've got this really high mortgage and this and that, I used to just go, yeah, so what's that got to do with me? So make sure the arguments are about you, the value you can bring, and those kinds of things. And then let's move on to what you do when you go back. So when you go back, no matter what you get offered, you're going to renegotiate because there's always more to be had. Let me just give you a quick follow-on from that story where I gave that neutral reaction. And this is something really personal, right? I gave that very neutral reaction. I intentionally didn't go back for 3 days. And then they came back to me. We're just wondering what you think about the offer. And of course, I built my arguments. And there was something around having to work extra long hours in the first year and it only being a small amount more, and that I was losing my bonus where I was coming from, whatever, some kind of stuff like that. And they came back, after I did that, they came back and they gave me another 15% more. Now, if I hadn't done that, I would have found out 2 days into my new job that somebody who worked for me, who had a much smaller job than me, had far less responsibility than me, would have been making more money than me. So that's what companies do. They have no problem making you an offer that puts you in a really, can you imagine what that would have done to my motivation on day 2 if I'd found that out? And even with my negotiation, I wasn't making much more than him, just so you know. So when you think, oh, they've given me loads, it's far too much, it's not loads compared to the guys in general that are sitting around on the floor next to you. So don't be afraid to go back and negotiate more. So what you could do now is ask them to give you another offer. So in this case, they said, well, what is it that you want? I said, you know, is there any way you could do a little bit more? Or could you maybe, you know, give me a welcome bonus or something like that? And then they came back and gave me the 15% more. It would have been legitimate, though, at this point for me to give them my target salary. And let me just tell you something, back to that point about not telling people what you want to earn. This is like a back of the envelope calculation. I'd say about 70%, if not 80% of the women that I coach that do not say their salary, the first offer that comes back is above the champagne. Most of them, because women just go too low. So that's what happens if you don't say how much you want to earn. And then something really important here is I recommend not to mix up non-salary items until you've got your salary and your normal annual bonus or commission or whatever it is nailed down. And the reason for that is that companies really like to do that. They like to go, well, yeah, but we can only offer you 55, but we have a great pension plan and we have this and this and this. Don't allow that to get mixed up. You want to get your salary nailed down first. And then only then, when they've made you an offer and it fits into your your benchmark of your 3 targets, it fits in there somewhere and you're happy with it, only then do you ask for non-salary items. And I sometimes have people say to me, well, should I only ask for those if I don't get what I want? And the answer is no, you should always ask for them. You should always say, is there any way I can get a relocation bonus? One of my clients did that, and they hadn't talked about it once throughout the interview. She said to them in the very last interview, do you do a relocation bonus? They gave her 5,000 euros. She wasn't expecting that. That was part of a package that they have somewhere in one of their treasure chests. So think about that. And then when you actually have your offer, finally, once you have agreed on a salary package and you've received an offer from them, either verbally or in writing, then is the time to ask any awkward questions that you thought could negatively affect your interviews. And believe me, we live in a world where you do not want to ask about parental leave in your first interview. It is just at the moment that in some companies that will get you booted out of the process. So once you have your offer and once it's all in writing, then you can ask. Why is that important? KPMG, the Von Frauen, and Mannheim University just published a survey that they do every 2 years. And in there were 15 companies, and one of the companies gave 0 maternity or parental leave above the legal minimum. And one of the companies gave a year fully paid leave. So if you're planning to have kids, that's a good time to ask that question. And it will be a really important factor for you in terms of keeping up your salary and your income while you're in parental leave. And, you know, anything else you want to ask, you know, that you might think was inappropriate, like you might want to ask about working from home and things like that. You can do these now because you haven't signed yet, but they also can't withdraw their offer just because they've just found out you might be planning to have 5 kids. Okay, so moving on, finally, get it all in writing. And I just want to tell you a very brief story. This is a true story. One of my former colleagues and friends got a job offer, and he was working in a fairly high paid salary. It was 90,000 base pay and 90,000 bonus. And he sent it to me and said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think it's great. Go for it. He started working there. He worked super hard the first year, had a phenomenal year, and they gave him 20,000 bonus. And he said, what about this 90,000? They said, well, we don't remember offering you 90,000. So he did put it in writing, but he unfortunately put it in writing to me and not to his company. If you do not get an offer in writing, please sit down and say, it is my understanding of the offer that you're offering me this, and then list everything and ask them to confirm. And either they will confirm, and usually they will, or they will say something like, well, we can't confirm the bonus because it's, you know, whatever, we don't, it's not compulsory, we don't always pay the bonus. But you know, if at the end of that year, he would have gone to them and said, there's a massive difference between 90 bonus and 20, he would have had a really good argument. As it was, he ended up making substantially less than the job he'd left in his first year, and he ended up having to leave because he couldn't get it resolved. In that particular case, by the way, what had happened was somebody had left the company. So get it in writing, confirm yourself if you have to. That's my final thing to say about it. And then just before we get over into questions, these are a few books. Getting to Yes is the one with the BATNA. Never Split the Difference is a really great book because it's all about negotiating in not just financial situations, but, you know, terrorists, etc. It's a really great book. And lastly, if you're self-employed in the coaching field, I love this book, The Prosperous Coach. Again, self-employed people also have to negotiate. And with that, I'm going to come to my last slide, which is, feel free to connect with me. Oh, there's a little error on this slide. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I've got a special offer for everybody in here. Until the 10th of November, you can book a free 30-minute session with me where I will help you with a current negotiation that you're involved in, or just any general coaching questions you have. I would recommend you book as soon as possible. I'm already pretty full. I probably only have about 10 slots free. So I'd really recommend you do that as soon as you can. The links have been posted by now by Eugene, so take a copy of them if you're not ready to look in your calendar now, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, it's back over to Britta.
So great. I mean, Katie, I know it's not the first session you did with us, and we are always thankful, but this was definitely one of the most, you know, contentful, with so many tips. And I found it also engaging, also being able to practice a bit, find out, you know, how you feel about, you know, being silent or push back or transform the situation and ask at your end? How is the range? I think we all got a lot of tips. I never, even if we talk about it each time we meet, Katie, I never stop also taking some notes. So thanks a lot. And as Katie also said, we will have still some time for Q&A. We will stay a bit longer, and I will make it long now, but I would also like to give you a bit of an overview what's next with And Ahead. So I introduced our sessions and the 10-step guide. And as a next one, we are going to have the session about resilience, milestones, and reflection about, you know, the year. What are the milestones you've achieved, reflect also, you know, doing some resilience exercises. That is going to be with our dear member and resilience trainer, Amina Carter, on the 27th of November. Can only recommend. She is a star if it comes to resilience. Even her presence alone makes you calm and resilient already. So at least that's the case for me. We also have wonderful job opportunities with our corporate partners for you on our job portal, where you can then potentially already exercise what we've learned today. Please exercise it before with your dear ones, partners, etc. Before you enter into an interview. At least that's how I do it. Even with sometimes negotiations with my daughter or somebody, you know, I know. So it's interesting to do that, to practice and to see how you feel comfortable. And I just had the chance to, I was also matched with one of our And Ahead members in the breakout rooms. And we also realized, okay, we still have a question. We didn't feel 100% comfortable with one answer. So there's always something you only discover if you really practice it before. So I can only encourage you to do that and look at the job opportunities. We have some with AK Bank, with a foundation, very interesting fundraiser position. On top, we are going to launch our membership area very soon. So stay tuned. We will then now go into the Q&A. We already received a few questions, and so are happy to be here and enter into a discussion. So I think I would only encourage you to ask questions, because we are here in a safe space. What is asked here doesn't leave the table, so be courageous, start already, as Katie said. It's nothing to lose here, but later on you may lose a few important steps in the negotiation. So it's better to practice now or ask now.
So I'm just going to pick up one question that's in the chat by Maverick Post. Is it not a bit risky move if it's 20% over champagne and having to give them the cold shoulder for 3 days? It is risky, I have to tell you. That was a job I really wanted. It was my dream job, and I'm a bit of a risk taker, so I did it anyway. Can you imagine if I hadn't, though?
Yeah, so, but that says also, Katie, it's very important to be true to yourself, you know. Not everybody probably could do that. Yeah. It's great that you've done. Somebody is more risk averse. It comes to in the investment process. It comes into, you know, negotiation. So with all have been said today, it's also you have to feel comfortable, and most of it can be practiced so that you feel comfortable, but probably some things are not for you. So you have to find your way, isn't it,
yeah.
Katie?
And I mean, one thing I will say this, listen, if you want to make good money, and earning money is important to you, this is one way to do it, right? You have to take some chances. And I get that it's not always easy. By the way, I spend a lot of time when I'm working with people building up their confidence so they actually have the guts to go and do some of this stuff, because I know it's not easy, right? It wasn't easy for me to do. But I just knew there was more in it. And if you know that, if you're aware, every offer you get, they're always expecting you to negotiate.
Also true. So Corinna has a question here. Would you like to come in and ask?
Perfect. Thank you. Great presentation. I have a quick question, Katie, more from your experience. Have you ever had an employer that then refused to continue to talk if the candidate doesn't reveal their current salary?
No. So some application forms, there's a field where you have to put your salary in, right? You can't, it's like a forced entry field. Just put your champagne salary in if you have to. But by the way, I know plenty of people who did that, and then we negotiated much more for them. Because that was just like, yeah, I don't even know what the job's about yet. It's way too early in the discussion. I just put a number in there. And then we went back and renegotiated.
Thanks.
I've never had anybody walk. I have had people where they've tried to renegotiate the salary and the company has then said, that's it, we're not paying anymore. But so it's really important to know this about negotiations. When you are two parties negotiating, always be at like the top of a mountain coming together. If I had taken the first offer, by the way, I've made that mistake in my past. I've taken the first offer. I'm left with a continuous feeling of dissatisfaction and of thinking, I could have gone further, I could have got more. And the company is left with a feeling, we could have offered her less. So by coming together at the very peak of the negotiation with you going back asking for a bit more, then both parties feel more satisfaction and there's more of a win-win, because I pushed them to the absolute limit and they know that we couldn't have got her for a cent less. And then there's a feeling of satisfaction and win-win. So emotionally, psychologically, it's really important to negotiate. And really important, I don't know if I emphasize this enough, when you're negotiating, it's really important to express a deep desire to work in that company. Don't be like, well, I don't really give a shit, excuse my language, whether I work here or not, and you give me an offer. That never works. It doesn't work when you're buying a scarf in a market, and it doesn't work in an interview. You have to say, I love this job. This is the job I've always really wanted. The salary is not quite enough for me. Is there anything else you could do? And then let them come back. And if the answer is no, that's the absolute maximum, then you're fine, then you've reached the peak, and then that's it, and you walk away. It isn't a question of getting more and more, it's a question of making sure you both get to the peak.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, we have a question from Maverick. Are the champagne, prosecco, and beer so wide apart for illustrative purposes? Should they be, in fact, be less wide apart?
No, there's no. So listen, all you do, you start with what you'd love to have. Could be 60, the minimum you'll accept 40, and in the middle somewhere is your prosecco. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. Just do what works for you. Top and bottom, and then the one in the middle.
Thank you.
Maria B asks, could you give us some tips to clarify our value in order to define the fair salary for us?
So, Marie, this is where you're going to have to do your inner work, right? Because, I'm 62 years old, and for the first 40 years of my life, I had much less confidence than I do now. So it's a continuous journey of working on yourself and evolving as a human being. And I mean, I make no secret out of it. I've done a lot of the work I've done with my various coaches that I've had over the years. I'm not trying to sell coaching necessarily as an answer, but you've got to understand that that's your inner journey, right? Is getting more confident and believing who you are. I can tell you that almost all the good things in my life have come when I finally embraced self-love and decided that I was fantastic as I was. And that leads to so much more progress than standing in the mirror every morning going, I'm too fat, I'm too old, I've got a double chin. That never works. Or the same thing with a job. I'm not good enough. They could probably hire somebody better than me. Stop using that kind of language and learn to really love yourself and work on yourself. And really take that opportunity to come in and talk to me for half an hour. There's a lot I can do to point you in a direction in just one session. And it's free, so what to lose?
Let me add also to that. I think it's very important, and we've covered it also a bit, to really well prepare and exercise, and also have option B or C. So I think if you go into a negotiation or into an interview, also, even if you apply to 2-3 other jobs and have first responses, then the feeling getting into the first interview is already much better than just having this one. And so I really like that. And I will also think there are, so power poses before you go into something sometimes that helps. There is a range of things, but it also has to be, it still has to be you, but you have to practice, be well prepared, do your research, and really look at your strengths and think about what have you done which made you really proud. And if you think about that very deeply before, then you already come with a higher self-esteem. So as Carol said, don't, as Katie said, don't look into the mirror and think of something which is not perfect, but think of something which made you really feel good and self-confident. And that sometimes also helps. It's a combination of preparation, research, practicing, and then also being in a good mindset. That is important, and you know how to get in a good mindset best. So that's difficult to say from here.
Maybe just to add to that, there's something that I really like to do with my clients, and that is to create like what Scott Adams, that does the Dilbert cartoons. He has this concept of the skill stack, where you do like a list of all the skills you have, because that's what makes you unique. So for instance, you may think, well, I'm not the greatest, I don't know, assistant, but you may speak 6 languages. And that in combination with being an assistant makes you truly unique. So it's really worth having a sit down and writing your skill stack out, and then talking to some friends or people you work with and asking them, what do they think your greatest strengths are? Because I did that with a couple of friends of mine once, and one of them said to me, oh, one of your greatest skills is that you're pragmatic. And I thought, oh, I would never have put that in there. But for her, that's what she saw in how I did my work when I was working with her. So I put it in my list. So that's a great way to go as well.
Yeah, because we all have our blind spots, but by asking others, they sometimes reveal the most natural to us, which we never bring across, but that makes us sometimes unique. And we experience that a lot also in our workshops, or if we work with senior leaders. And in a group, they reveal, and reflection and giving feedback, they reveal the kind of their DNA, because they give the feedback which you are aware, but then you wouldn't bring it across as it is so natural for you. But it's a strength, and it's your strength. And now we also have another question still from Bijal. How do you deal with recruiters that can be very pushy, as you know, as we all know, about wanting to know your salary range?
So first of all, remember what I said about ranges. Don't give them a range, because if you give them 60 to 70, they know your price is 70. So look, if they're really pushy and the only way you can get on is you just tell them your champagne number. And again, if you've got a few going on at the same time, you'll know what works and doesn't work. If you give your champagne number to one and they're like, oh, that's far too much, this industry, your job doesn't pay that, then you're like, all right, well, I went a bit high. Let me, adjust my levels down a bit. It's all about practice. A lot of the people that I work with go for multiple interviews, and make mistakes and practice this stuff before they get the job that they really want. And in each interview, they always think it's going to be their last chance and they have to get it perfect. And then they don't. And then they get the greatest job ever. 5 interviews in, or 5 job interviews in. Any other questions? Anybody want to raise their hand and come in and ask a question?
Yes, please, dare.
Still a few people in here, and we're not leaving just yet.
Go ahead, Bijal.
How'd you say your name, first of all?
Bijal.
Bijal, okay. Hi, Bijal.
Hi, thanks. It's been a great session, and I had my breakout session with Britta, who I know from previous underhead coaching. So I've had situations, and this is talking to recruiters exclusively, where they've been really pushy and they've started with what you talked about. This would be a great opportunity for you. Without having read my CV, without having looked at anything, and they're asking me to describe my profile to them. And that was a big red flag for me. I think at that point I decided this recruiter's rubbish and I want nothing to do with this recruitment, a consultant, because I was ready to walk away then. But it kind of got further and I kind of played the game a little bit in that I thought, let's see what he has to offer. But it became more and more pushy as it went on about wanting to know what the salary range was. And I did throw out some numbers and I did throw out, but they were just not buying it. I mean, is that just a red flag as a recruiter, or would I have,
you gave them a number and then they did what?
They wanted to know what I was earning at that point. But I just gave them,
What did you
I just gave them a champagne number.
Of what you wanted to earn. Would you just say that thing with an NDA? I've never, honestly, I've been doing this for years and years. I've never had anybody where that's failed.
Okay, I need to try that. I think that's
just try it, because what most people do is they try and talk around it, don't really want to say, but if you go, you know, I actually can't give you my salary because, you know, and then it's small, and then nobody ever in all the time I've been doing this has said to my clients, well, actually, I want you to tell me anyway. They just go, oh, okay. And then they move on.
Okay. But is there also
a game, Bijal? You said that yourself. It's a bit of a...
Is there also a thing where they're not always being 100% transparent with you? Because I always have this feeling. Yeah.
Yes, of course they are. I mean, look, I've had people that I've interviewed that I've actually said to them, where say I interviewed somebody, there was a man with me and me interviewing somebody, and that man asked them what their salary expectation was. I've actually had people where I've walked them out of the office. I was the boss. I've walked them out of the office to the lift and I've said, we're just going to pretend you didn't say that. Because I knew they'd gone in way too low and I didn't want that in writing anywhere. And I knew, for example, I'm just making it up. Say I knew that role paid 80. And they asked for 60. I knew if that number got to HR, they'd offer them 65, and then on day 3 or whenever, they'd find out everybody around them was making 80. Where would be the fun in that from an employer point of view? It's a stupid move to make to underpay somebody if everybody else is being paid more. But companies do it all the time. And yes, and they're not being transparent. That's why men make more money than women.
Yeah.
That's why in that asset management study that I quoted, not one company was willing to reveal salary ranges. Not one company was willing to reveal whether they have done a comparison between men's and women's salaries. And most of the companies said they'd never done it. When I started my last job, the first thing I did was say, I want to see all the salaries and compare men and women. And I went straight to New York and said, there's imbalances here. We need to tackle this. And they were, well, nobody said this before.
Why do they do that? Why is there a range? Why do they actually ask for salary information? Should it be a question?
Because they're trying to figure out where you are. So you're here, you've got your posts that you're about to nail into the ground, and they're over there. They're trying to find out where you are so that they can have the power in the negotiation. See, when you know where they are, or if they've put their post in the ground, then you have the power.
Michelle, you have a question?
Yeah, Michelle, and there was also Ezra.
Hi, thank you for that session. It's really great. Also nice to see Kathy again.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
We know each other.
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting comment about these forms where you have to put in the salary expectations and you, yeah, and then I did that a couple of times for jobs I thought I was quite qualified for, and I didn't put in the champagne number, but I put in the Prosecco number. And actually, and then I did not end up getting called for the interviews, and then later and then at some point I felt a bit more desperate because I was getting more close to the search, and I just ended up putting in the beer number. And then at least I thought, well, let's put in this so I at least get an interview. Yeah, but I wanted to hear your thoughts about how to navigate this, because in the end there was not really an opportunity to actually negotiate the salary later. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on, because yeah, how to navigate that.
So you tried putting in your champagne number, but then I find it interesting, just as a comment, that you assumed it was that didn't get you the interview. And the one thing you changed was your expectation. So that's a separate point, because you know, we make all sorts of assumptions. It may not have had anything to do with your salary. There may have been something in your CV that wasn't what you were looking for. Generally, when people don't get interviews, it's a CV problem. And when people get interviews and not jobs, it's an interview problem. So, I mean, yeah, but once you've said the number, I mean, you can come back from it. I don't see why. If you've put in your beer number and you've gone in and there's been a change in what you think the job is, or you can you know, argue that point, then you can always go back and go, actually, this is what I want. But then you have to put, because you've already put your stake in the ground, then it's up to you to move that stake. So you can't expect them to figure out what they should offer you. But I get that about wanting a job. Once in my career, by the way, I took a 30% pay cut after losing my job. A job I was in 11 years. There was no jobs. It was 2003. And I just made a decision I was going to take this job because I wanted to be working and paid 30% less. It took me 7 years to get back to my previous salary. But it was a good call, because if I hadn't taken it out of a place of unemployment, it's more difficult to negotiate. And we all know that one of the things Under Head helps with is getting women back into the workforce that have had breaks. But there you need to think about how you're going to, you know, manage that. That's why confidence is really important.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it's a bit different if you try to get try to get a job while you're unemployed.
Yeah, it is different.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Is Ezra still there? Because she was raising her hand earlier. Can't see you. Ezra?
Vadim has a question too.
Okay.
Should I take Vadim's question?
Sure.
So you've given a lower salary at the beginning, Vadim, that's my understanding. Can I bring him up just in case we have some questions? Are you still here?
Vadim?
Yes, I'm still.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. I still have some issues with the.
No problem. I just want, just in case we have some questions. So say you've had one interview, got a second interview, you've told them a salary that now you believe is too low.
Yes, I'm 100% sure that it's too low.
100% sure it's too low, and that means you're probably right. And so, I mean, first of all, let's just get one thing clear. You don't have to take any job you're going for. Just because if somebody offers you a salary that you realize is too low, you can always walk away from it. Just remember that. So I would try and avoid talking about money now until the very end, until you're both clear on whether you want the job, whether they want you, and then I would wait until and see what they offer you. And that's how I'd manage that.
Sounds fair.
If you want more information, contact me, book a session. We can go through the specifics of it, because I understand a lot of this stuff's confidential. You may not want to talk about it here, but I can give you some very concrete tips if I know a bit more of the information around it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Nice to see a couple of men in here listening to me talk about women getting more pay.
It's true for everyone. I mean,
by the way, I don't think men are good at negotiating either. I think they just have, they're good at sort of going in there and expecting more. I think that's the difference. Yeah.
Probably someone wants to share an experience, if not a question, we can all learn from. Would also be an opportunity here for the Q&A. What do you think, Katie?
Sure. Anybody?
Yeah, hi, it's Christina Baumann.
Hi.
Hey, thanks. It's been a very interesting webinar, and obviously come a lot across those situations, mostly on the hiring side. But, you know, I think what people have to bear in mind is once they are hired into a company, it's very difficult to move away from a salary level, right? And so that's the benchmark for a long time, unless you get a significant promotion or you get an opportunity to renegotiate because you are at the risk of leaving and the company absolutely wants to keep you. So I think to get that entry point right and think about, what do I really need to do that job in a happy place, to not be unhappy after the first 3 months because the salary isn't in the right place. I think that's important for your mindset as well when you go in and negotiate. So what is that level that you absolutely need to achieve as you enter the company to be really happy in your job for longer than just 3 months?
I absolutely love the point you're making, Christina. And very often I have people who've been told, well, we'll review your salary in 6 months. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't happen. I hate to be cynical, but it just doesn't. It's one of those, in German, we say Floskeln. You know, people will say, yeah, we'll review it in 6 months just to get you to sign and be quiet. And as Christian rightly pointed out, the minute you're in, then you're in that like 1% a year, 2% a year, whatever inflation increase. And it's really hard to move up through the ranks pay-wise. So you've got to get in there early. I think you should make an assumption when you go for a new job that this is going to be the pay you're always going to have as long as you work there. I've gone into every job with that in mind, that whatever I negotiate now might be the salary I earn here for the next 5 years.
Very good point. Any other, somebody else who wants to share an own experience or giving a tip from something which worked for him, her, or did not work and don't want to know why, or getting some input? I think we are here to help each other, support each other. So go ahead. Corinna, yeah.
I was just going to share something when I recruit and I have people come to me, it's going back to what Katie said at the beginning with ranges. When people come to me and say, I want to earn between 90 and 120. And I think, how bizarre. I like it better when somebody gives me a number. And that might be too high. I might think that's too high, but a range, I think I can only re-emphasize is not a good idea. I think you need to have, I like your, champagne and beer and Prosecco numbers, and that you really need to think about it and you need to stick with it. And you need to have that, you need to take that risk that somebody's going to turn around and say, sorry, no, we cannot. Now, I've been in that position too. People came and I'm thinking, no, it's just, I can't pay it. It's not the job is not that level. And then we don't agree. But ranges are not good as a recruiting kind of manager.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Corinne, and I've seen it as well when people come in with ranges. And just something else just to keep in mind is, I've seen this quite often, by the way, with my clients, that people walk away and get told, I'm sorry, you're too expensive, and they walk away, and then the person calls them 3 days later and says, we've reviewed and we've decided we're going to offer you what you want. That happens way more often than you would think. So it's never over. So always make sure you exit from the last conversation very politely, very friendly, because they're going to come back a lot of the time.
That's also a great tip. I like that, Katie. And thanks, Corinna, for pointing it out. from your experience. Nicole.
Yes. Hello. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So my last negotiation is 22 years ago. So maybe not the best experience for a negotiation right now, but maybe for a new joiner, something they should keep in mind. I started putting a range in the tariff into my negotiation. So I came from Rheinland-Pfalz and moved to a position in Hesse. And I just said, I just told them I want to earn tariff E13 something, blah, blah, blah. And it was then my fault because the tariff in all these different states are different. So you need to know Hesse is paying lower salaries than Rheinland-Pfalz. It's something you need to have in mind. So please inform yourself upfront, else you will lose a lot of money. So this was in my case, I would say a certain amount, and it takes a while until you can catch up again. Another topic is be strict in why you are fighting for your salary. Something I also learned in my latest step in the career. I said I was really clear. The offer I'm not going for, this is not why I'm standing up each day. This is not what I deserve. This is something you need to be very clear first for yourself, and then you can also persuade your management. These are 2 recommendations.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nicole. So powerful.
Yeah. Stand up for yourself is always important. Yeah.
Always important. And I want to just quickly share something with you. I had a conversation with Britta a few days ago, and she was saying women need to invest more in themselves, in their development. And I loved what she said. She said, so many women think nothing about going out and buying expensive shoes and handbags, but they don't invest in themselves. And it's such a powerful point, because if you do invest in yourself and you do negotiate a better salary and you do learn and you do improve, you can buy way more handbags later on and shoes.
Oh, yeah.
It's so worth investing in yourself. And by the way, investing in yourself is things like attending tonight, like you all did.
Absolutely. So grateful for your time. I think that's the best way to invest in your career, in your further development. And yeah, so there are different ways to grow. You can read, you can self-learn. There's a lot also on Coursera. It's not only the big MBAs which lead you further. It's the little steps, and that's what we say with And Ahead anyway. You don't need to think about a huge step. Sometimes it's the little steps, but every day, which lead you then to the next bigger one.
Absolutely right. It's so right. Because one of my sayings is if I don't learn it now, time will pass anyway.
Yeah.
And do I want to look back in a year and have learned nothing, or have learned a new skill? That's how I got myself through all my coaching courses while I was working full-time and had kids and whatever. It's that knowledge that I would be somewhere in a year. And also that gave me my fantastic plan B, by the way, of being able to leave the world I no longer felt I wanted to work in and become a self-employed coach. That was because I had learned and done and taken the effort to develop myself.
Yeah.
Anybody else, or shall we close it down for the day?
We have one question here. Nicole is asking, do we receive the slides? And I think, Katie, you will
you can have the slides.
Share it with us, and we will then provide it to everyone and share it with you. And there's also a recording. So you are on the safe side, Nicole, and everyone who couldn't listen everything or had to step out somewhere, or because we had so many more who registered, then sometimes last things come out. So we have the opportunity to also share the recording. So spread the word and everything Katie shared today with us. And also thanks for all of you bringing in your ideas, your questions, also being willing to answer a few questions if it comes to your confidence level with negotiation. I think it's really a topic we have to feel more and more at ease to talk about, you know, numbers, etc. It should be very normal and don't feel too shy. And I think we know our worth, but to negotiate it and to bring it across in a confident way, and you need a bit of support, a bit of tools, a bit of guidance. Katie is there. We have also these sessions. So look out for things which help you, support you on the way. They are all there, but you have to take the decision, or you have to also take those opportunities and make them into reality. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And